What up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get a city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get a city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get a city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1719 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Yes, we are open, an award-winning podcast from Monaris, hosted by FOTM El Grego. Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. Get your butts to Christie Pitts this summer for the best baseball in the city outside the dome. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Building Toronto Skyline, a podcast and book from Nick Iones, sponsored by Fusion Corp Construction Management Inc. and Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Okay, here's what I wrote. Today, making his Toronto Mike debut, it's Colin Cripps. But here's what happened. Colin was scheduled for 11 o'clock a.m. And, you know, Colin seemed like a nice guy in our correspondence. So at about 11:01, I started thinking, where the hell is Colin? But I don't have a phone number for Colin Cripps. I'm all set up. I've got Spoons. I've got Crash Vegas. I've got Junk House. I've got some band, Blue Rodeo. I had some questions about Kathleen Edwards, but I was going to read the room when I got there. Okay, but I realized I don't have a phone number for Colin, so I'm messaging him on Instagram. There's nothing. Now it's like 11:10. This is a bad sign. Where is Colin Cripps? But I have in my Rolodex, I have another member of Blue Rodeo, the great Mike Boguski. So I phoned, like not text, I phoned Mike Boguski. Mike, when you got that phone call from me, what were you thinking? Like, who is this guy? Why is he calling me? He never calls me. What were your thoughts when you saw that I was calling you?
Well, with all due respect,
I'm not in your contact.
All due respect, I didn't have you saved in the
But you still answer.
I do. I'm one of those guys that has to answer the phone. My wife is always like, don't answer it if it's not in the contacts. But I just think, oh, maybe this is, you know, like, because when I got the call for Blue Rodeo, it was very similar. It was just a call that came in. I thought it was somebody selling me internet service or cable, Starfish Entertainment. Cleaning. So I figured, I'll take a shot, and then it's Mike.
So it's me. I go, hey, it's Toronto Mike, and then we had a little chat where basically I wanted Colin's phone number.
Correct.
Then I called Colin Cripps, and Colin basically he messed up, man. He was so apologetic. I think I'd have him outside cleaning my car right now.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say this: that Colin is one of the sweetest, most gentlemanly, honorable dudes I know. I have great love in my heart for Colin, so I can only assume that there's a legitimate reason why he couldn't.
Well, I said,
here.
"Where are you? Like, where are you?" I'm basically like, "I'll get over here." I'm so, you know what it's like when you know who's coming over and you start prepping.
Of course,
like I've got Shine loaded up. I mean, I've got so many great songs loaded up. I want to talk to him. I've got Inside Out by Crash Vegas loaded up.
Right.
Shout out to FOT and Michelle McAdory. I got questions. I'm excited. Colin fucking Cripps is coming over.
What about Colin's solo album, Stormy Northern Days? I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, what a travesty that he's not here to talk about all the great music that he's produced and written. Look at that guy.
Just a little while we set the table here, but listen to that. This is Aurora Skies. I have it loaded up. You know, Kathleen Edwards wrote a song about her breakup with Colin Cripps. Can you play that for a guest? I was going to read the room, and then I was going to see how he felt about it and see, can I talk about that?
I don't want to go too deep into that, but I was going through some emotional pain at the time that Colin made this album, and I just kept playing it on repeat. And every time I would see Colin, I'd just say, we'd be at a Blue Rodeo gig. I'm like, come on, man, can you just play that tune? And I know there's a lot of people across the country that really attach themselves to this album of Colin. This is hilarious that I've come down here to talk about
my stuff, but I would
rather talk about Colin because, to be honest, like, First of all, I'm on this album. I play accordion on a track, so you could play that track if you really wanted to represent
That's
me.
a fun fact.
But this is a fantastic album. He put it out on vinyl last year, and I encourage everybody to buy it. And I'm not just saying this because Colin's my guy. He's an incredible songwriter. I mean, Junk House, Shine, all that, Crash Vegas. But this album is of my favorite albums ever, not just Canadian. It's a beautiful, beautiful album, and I say go buy it.
And I've had Greg Keeler on the program, and I've had Michelle McAdory on the program, but there is quite a little story there about Crash Vegas, because you got Blue Rodeo already a going concern, and then Crash Vegas, and Keeler and McAdory are a couple, and Colin Cripps is in there, and they essentially fire Keeler because Keeler's distracted by this Blue Rodeo thing.
Yeah,
there's a story there.
I can't go too deeply into the.
But what are you here for?
I'm really here to just,
Well, here I'm still setting the table. Listen, we're gonna get to everything. The legend, FOT and Bobby Wiseman. We're gonna talk about him.
Yes.
You got something cooking there, but hold your thought there. So basically, Colin Cripps, we had a great chat, and I'm like, "Where are you? Like, just come over here." And I'm going to the bank. I don't know. There's stuff going on in his life. So I want to let the listenership know that Colin Cripps is 100% going to be in the basement for his Toronto Mike debut on July 16, because Colin's going away for a bit. So July 16, we're going to have that episode. He plays with Bryan Adams.
Yeah, he produced a really cool track that Bryan did. It was a version of, I think it was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club that Bryan
Oh yeah, for
recorded.
the BBC or something?
And I think there was an album of covers that Bryan put out that Colin also produced. Colin being such a great producer.
Kathleen Edwards left Colin for Bon Iver.
Yeah, I can't really get into that whole thing. That you're gonna have to talk to Colin about that.
I got to read the room.
16th, yeah.
I got to read I don't want to
That's not my story to tell.
I don't want to stir up any trauma.
I can only speak of Colin as a gentleman human being, and as a producer par excellence, and as a guitar player par excellence that I've used on Here's to Tomorrow, Goodbye to Yesterday. I cut an early version. Colin plays on the track Highway 62 on the re-release of that. And Colin usually is my go-to guy because he gets the whole school of Johnny Marr edge guitar playing, which very few people get. He's of that generation where he understands how that delay functions, how those arpeggiated chords are played to play a melody and an arpeggiated chord at the same time. He's the guy. So anytime I need that, I call Colin.
So I even talked to Tom Wilson yesterday. I got the Junk House album out here. That's not the album with Colin Cripps on it, but we mentioned Shine. So Spoons, Crash Vegas, Junk House, Kathleen Edwards, Bryan Adams. And then of course he joins Blue Rodeo. When did you join Blue Rodeo, Mike Boguski?
I joined in 2008, but don't forget that Colin also helped Geddy Lee write a very cool book about basses, and so he's very knowledgeable.
Guitars,
he's one of the most renowned appraisers of guitars in the world, actually, if you want to know the truth.
Well, I got a question about that.
So I believe that when Geddy was doing this book about basses, he had got in touch with Colin as an advisor, and he's very connected with the Rush, the remaining members of Rush. So Colin is a very well-liked, well-known, well-connected guy. So are we done the Colin Cripps part of it?
I'm so close, man.
Okay.
Listen, I'm going off the lid here, but Colin Cripps confirmed for July 16. But then because we were talking...
Yeah, because I live down the street from you. I guess that's what your listeners need to know. So when you called me, I was literally like 15 minutes away. I'm like, yes, I can be there. I just did an interview yesterday on CIUT on 334578 with Steve Fruitman, with myself and Bob Wiseman, because we have a tour going on we're not calling it a tour, that's right. We're just doing shows. But we're sort of calling it Two Pianos, No Rodeo.
Which is a great name.
It's a great name. Of course, Bob came up with that name. And it really is. I've rejected everything. Now I've reached a point. I was going to do this song, which really explains my position, but I've sort of reached the end of the line of playing, other than Blue Rodeo and John Bora, of course, who are
also an FOTM.
Two bands. Oh, this is why I can't do the thing tomorrow night, because I'm actually playing in Mimico with the John Bora band at a private function. I knew there was something at the back of my mind.
Boguski's referring to is the fact that I'm like, Boguski, you live in the neighborhood, get your ass to Great Lakes Brewery tomorrow, which is June 26, 2025, because from 6 to 9 p.m. it's TMLX 19. Palma Pasta will feed you. Your first beer is on the house. We can hang, and you're telling me you're in a Mimico, which is next door to Great Lakes.
There's this guy named Bob, and he hangs around the Cameron House, and he's a wonderful benefactor of the arts. I don't know Bob's last name, but he basically brings in independent artists to play in his house, and he's just
amazing.
4 streets over. Yeah, and he invites people in the community, and he feeds the artists, and he pays everybody really well. So we've been doing these outdoor barbecues every summer, so we're doing one tomorrow. I guess if you know Bob, get in touch with Bob.
Well, Bob and I should have combined our events.
I think you and Bob need to actually get to know each other, because I think
Bob.
the two of you.
Who's coming over there? I want to know who's been Mimico in these backyards.
Like Bob is the sort of music benefactor of Mimico, so he's somebody you definitely need to connect with. I'll give you his email when we're done.
So you're not available for TMLX 19?
No, because I'm playing with John, and unfortunately it's the last time I'm going to be playing with John for quite some time, because Blue Rodeo is so busy this summer. But before, we were talking about this, how I have now I've reached a point at the age of 47 where I finally started writing songs. I now sing. I'm a singer-songwriter. I never thought that would happen. And Bob Wiseman, he hosts, along with some other people, this really great open stage at the Transac on Mondays. And I've known Bob for a long time. I knew Bob before I knew anybody in Blue Rodeo. I sort of got in touch with Bob recently, and I said, I really miss your shows. I used to go to your shows where you would have your projector, and he's a great songwriter. I said, are you doing any? And I know he's really engrossed in doing his PhD, and he's sort of gone into the academic world now, and he doesn't really do that much live music as much as he used to. But he said to me, well, why don't we do something together? We'll call it Two Pianos, No Rodeo. I happen to be in this place now where, like I said, other than Blue Rodeo and John Bora, I'm not really into doing cover gigs. I'm not really into learning material. I'm really into writing and improvising. I'm going through a bit of another personal crisis in my life right now with my mother's she's got some challenges, and so I find that back the last time in my life where I had really deep personal challenges going on in 2016, I also went down the improv hole. And so everything in the universe has sort of come together at this point now where I'm very much wanting to do a set of my own music, of my own improvisations. Bobby's going to do the same, so I think I'll probably do the first set. He'll do the second set, and I think if you're really into improvised piano, if you're into original singer-songwriter material, if you're into Bobby's material, if you haven't heard my songs and you'd like to see, what's that going on? I thought Mike Boguski was just a keyboard player. I didn't know he wrote songs and sang. Then come to this show, because it's going to be really interesting. I have a lot of affection for Bobby and his work. He's been very much a mentor to me for many years through email and whatnot. So the opportunity to do this sort of dual show with him is something that is quite special, and we've got shows booked in Toronto on July 10th at Sellers and Newell Bookstore on College Street. July 12th, we're playing Gore's Landing Hall in Gore's Landing. I believe we are then doing Stratford the day after Blue Rodeo does their show at the Budweiser stage. So I think that's August 25th. And I think we're also going to Wolf's Island on August 30th. Chris Brown from...
Chris Hugh Brown. He rebranded when the other Chris Brown spoiled it.
I feel badly for him. He has a wonderful venue on Wolf's Island. We're doing a show there. He's got like a Steinway piano, and I think we're trying to add one in Montreal and or Bancroft. So follow at Mike Boguski Music, or I think he's at Rock Bob. I'm not sure of Bobby's handle on the Instagram or the Facebook, but we're advertising these shows, and we'd love to see you.
I'm so intrigued by this duo, Bobby Wiseman and Mike Boguski. Now, when you're hanging out with Bob, I'm always curious because Bob has been over. By the way, when you were talking to CIUT yesterday, Steve Fruitman, right?
He's so knowledgeable.
How long was the chat?
Oh, I think we were chatting for a good 45 minutes.
Okay, because I was searching for long-form Bobby Wiseman chats, and there's not much out there. But you guys did 45 minutes, which I would consider long-form.
Maybe a half an hour, 45. It wasn't the longest interview. It wasn't the shortest interview. It was somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle. Okay, I find him fascinating, Bobby Wiseman. Like just the whole persona. Like he's such an artist.
He's very committed to what he does, right? I mean, when he plays piano, there's a truthfulness to the way he plays. His songs are very direct and truthful, and there's not a lot of I don't know what the word is. What you hear is what you get. And I think with improvisation, I was explaining this on the interview yesterday, that I had I guess the difference between Bobby and myself is like Bobby is the more outside of any framework he is, the more comfortable he is. Like I mean, he is a pure improviser. I mean, I'm sure there's structure to his improvisations, but I mean, he's really a master improviser. I am someone who is an improviser as well. I'm not as far along in that journey as he is, but just to sort of watch him, every time I hear him or watch him play, I take it in, and it somewhat goes through my consciousness and comes out in my playing. So it's just artistic osmosis.
Now, let me tell the listenership that when we were chatting about you coming over as like a substitute of sorts, like you're filling in for Colin Cripps here.
So this is an improvisation of itself right here.
Yeah,
you gave me a
notes.
call. You have no notes. You called me. I'm here. We're talking. So this is sort of the improvisation of life.
You originally, for a moment, you said, you asked, can I bring Bob Wiseman? And
Yeah,
I
texted Bob. I said, hey, if you're in the neighborhood, come to Toronto Mike, because I'm going to be there. But we had about a half an hour lead up time, so right. I didn't really.
Well, but here's the thing, though. If Bob had been here, that would have given me an opportunity. I'm doing a mockumentary on a change of heart gong, like a little gong that appears on the album Smile. And this gong was performed by Gil Moore from Triumph. Okay, so Gil did it, I guess, at a studio, and then they had to get this audio to whatever going on with Change of Heart, Ian Blurton's band. But I am told by Ian Blurton himself that it is Bob Wiseman who produced the gong. Like, so Bob played a role in producing the gong that Gil Moore does not remember doing, by the way, because I had Gil down here and we talked about it. But so Gil Moore hits a gong, I guess at his, what's the name? Metalworks, right?
Metalworks, yeah.
Yeah, so he hits a gong. It's produced by Bob Wiseman, and then the audio obviously gets to whatever, Change of Heart for Smile. But finally, I would have had an opportunity to find out from Bob, like, did this happen? Because Gil Moore does not, like, did Gil Moore hit this gong? Aren't you interested? Did Gil Moore hit this gong? I feel should be a bigger story.
I think you should have Bob back on here, and you can ask him, and then he'll...
Well, of course, I would love to have Bob Wiseman back on, and it sounds like there was a moment where it could have happened right now. This is like when Saturday Night Live learned that Paul McCartney and John Lennon were in town, and then they tried to get them to come by on a Saturday night for Saturday Night Live. Like, I almost had Bob Wiseman answer my gong question, but I'm going to tell you and the listenership that episode 1300 of Toronto Mic'd features Bob Wiseman, and we talked about his career, making and producing music for people like Blue Rodeo, Ron Sexsmith, Bruce McCullough, Lowest of the Low, Robert Priest, and others. So you can find that episode. It's an hour and 10 minutes I talked to Bob Wiseman.
Well, the thing I love about Bob's CV the most is that he actually got Ron signed, right? I mean, I don't know if a lot of people know that that Ron and many others of Bob's songwriting circle would appear at these open stages, and I think Bob went to great lengths to make that first album for Ron Sexsmith, and ultimately got Ron the record deal, which then led to quite a career. So kudos to Bob for helping another artist there. That's the kind of thing Bob does. A lot of
he's got a good ear. That's why he's playing with Boguski.
He's got a good heart too.
Change of heart. Okay, so there's a message on the live stream for you. Now, we've already learned you won't be at TMLX 19 tomorrow. Although I feel I should talk to this other Bob about, like, maybe start later and just come to Great Lakes for like an hour and then do this Mimico thing. But I don't know Bob, so I can't make that happen. But there's a woman named Andy who will be at TMLX 19 tomorrow. And Andy says, tell Mike B, we're both Mike B's, by the way, but tell Mike B that there will be an old friend at TMLX who wants to say hi if he shows up. Andy Pandy.
So is Andy the old friend, or is Andy the...
Andy's the old friend.
Andy, I know so many Andys.
Andy McKenzie.
Andy McKenzie, okay.
Loves Degrassi. Does that help at all?
Yeah, it
Degrassi
does.
head?
Absolutely, yeah.
Can you visualize her? Very attractive woman. She came over when Arlene Lott was over here recently, who's like, now she's like the queen of pies or something.
Oh my gosh, Andy McKenzie. It's just sort of like, literally, like, my brain was
look
like...
Look at how happy you look.
No, I don't. And then I'm like... Is it the same? Well, say hi to Andy for me. And
well, she's listening to you right now, buddy. You can speak to her directly.
Andy, how you doing? I wish I could be there, but I'm doing a private show with John Bohr Band, and maybe we'll see you down the road sometime.
I just saw John Bora at the Garrison for like a Tragically Hip cover night where it was for Daily Bread Food Bank in sort of like in honor of Dave Bookman.
Cool.
It was pretty cool, actually. And I think I saw him. I know I saw him now because he was in Change of Heart. Bora was in
Change of Heart. Glenn Milchin was in Change of Heart.
Right. I saw them both at this Change of Heart show at Geary. Yeah.
I think Glenn went to that show and he spoke.
I saw him there.
Yeah, he spoke very favorably of it. He said it was amazing, and
it's a cool venue too.
I'm sure it is. Yeah, I remember seeing Change of Heart when the first university I attended was York University way back after Power. And they were playing like the campus pub in Winners College. I can't remember the name of it. The Absinthe. That's it. The name of the pub was the Absinthe. And Change of Heart was playing in this tiny little pub, and I was blown away. I'm not sure what the lineup was, but
amazing.
And of course,
as long as you got E in there, you got.
I played a couple times with Ian.
Oh, Bernard Mazo too. I think he's a key guy in Change.
Yeah, he's a synth guy. He makes all the bloops and bleeps.
Okay, you can add him and Rob Pruce. So Rob Pruce, of course, will be at TMLX 19. I want to get a story from you. If I can. But first, I have a question about Power. So, I and your brother, Mark, we are the last graduating class from the original location.
And I was in halfway through grade 10 when it moved. So I would have been the last full year grade 9 class to be at the old location.
So this is my question for you. You're in a unique position to answer this. What was it like? Because I never got a moment in the new facility, which is close to Centennial Park there. But what was it like to just be in the same high school but have a new building?
Oh, it was totally weird. I mean, it definitely took a while to get used to it. It never had the sort of campus feel of the old location, which really was sort of like a little mini college, right? Because you had St. Joe's, you had Michael Power, you had Center Portable, North Portable. So you really got the feel that
there was a portable gym.
Yeah, it was wild. There was all sorts of wildness, and
it
then
was like a campus.
The new Power was obviously like a traditional high school, and so it didn't have that. But we made it work, and eventually it became our home.
It's funny you mentioned that campus thing we had going on Power because I would watch shows like Degrassi or 90210, and they just had a big building.
Right.
It's but I didn't know any better, right? So I thought it was like all high schools were kind of in that university vein that we had at Michael Power. But when I went to U of T after, and it really did prepare you, I'm in this building at this time.
Absolutely.
In this building, because sometimes you'd have that, I don't know what it was, 10 minutes between class or
Absolutely.
whatever. But, you're in Power proper, and now you got to go to second floor of St. Joe's or whatever for math or whatever. It was quite. And I remember one year I broke my leg one year in grade 9. I did, so I was on crutches for 6 weeks, and I remember that 10 minutes to get across campus on the crutches, man.
Were you the class that the grad prank was you built a concrete wall in between the north and the south entrance of Center Portable?
I don't remember this.
I think somebody did that. But they built a wall at night, and then when the school showed up in the morning, they're like, nobody could get in.
Sounds like the good old days. Okay, I got to ask you about somebody who will be at, again, you hear I'm talking about TMLX 19 a lot, because it's tomorrow, for goodness sakes, and I want, I'm getting food for 100 people, and I want people to show up and enjoy free Palma pasta, and also you get your first beer on the house, and I want to get as many free beers as I can, because that's the way I roll, Boguski. But I mentioned to you that Snow is confirmed to attend TMLX 19,
That's
and you said you
fantastic.
almost did something with Snow. Can you tell me
I've
what
got
that
two
was?
connections to Snow. One is my wife was very good friends with his
first wife.
His first wife who
passed
away. And then I have a tennis friend, Carl Hale, who runs the Rogers Cup. He's a dual Jamaican Canadian citizen. He was on the Jamaican Cup Davis Cup team, and he knew Snow back in the day. And so through those two connections, I've met Snow a few times. I had a track I wanted him to sing over. We never got a chance to have it actually happen. I guess he was busy, I'm busy, but I have a great love and respect for the artistry of Snow. I remember being down at Rebel Fest in Jamaica, and he's very much respected down there. He has a lot of respect and credibility in that scene, and so I think he's one of Canada's. Should we call him an unsung hero? I don't think he's unsung.
I'm singing his praises.
I think his tunes were pretty big and popular back in the day. So shout out to Snow and all his great music.
Let's put it this way. Billboard Hot 100, which is sort of the standard for a lot of chart watchers, U.S. Billboard Hot 100 I'm talking about, he went to number 1 for 7 weeks with Informer.
Yeah, no, that was huge. I think his dad played tennis at Central Park Tennis too with my dad. So that's four Snow connections.
I don't know. I don't know if he even he never talks about his dad. I feel like maybe I gotta confirm that story. I'll confirm
I don't know about that
tomorrow.
fourth one. I just remember back in the day in the 80s, there was a guy at Central Park Tennis who was
like an O'Brien.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe
he's a Darren
maybe
O'Brien.
it was another Jamaican artist. I'm not sure.
Okay, well, we got to check in on that story. So, one of the interesting stories that came out from my last episode of Toronto Mike, which was about this period of time. You're in your late 40s. I'm turning 51 on Friday. So we kind of were aging out of this style. Maybe I'm going to ask you about this scene that had Sum 41 and Avril Lavigne, and then you had Billy Talent and Alexis on Fire.
Yeah.
What did you think of that explosion? Early 2000s.
That's out of I was out of I already had attached myself to the scene that I'm still a part of now, right? I was Blue Rodeo and Ron Sexsmith and Change Your Heart. It just I think whatever's happening in high school, early university, that's where you're attached to. And I have great respect for those bands. And they've certainly paid their dues, especially Sum 41. I think they really, it's just I don't attach to that aesthetic. It's just not my bag.
Yeah, I know. I felt when I was having this chat with these guys, I realized, oh yeah, they're 15 years younger than me.
Right.
Like this is really for a younger demo. But those in the sweet spot, that would really hit. I would think if you're in high school when Sum 41 hits, that's sort of like your Beastie Boys or something.
I'm
right?
I'm sure to the kids who attach to that scene, they're as passionate as you and I are about our scene. You know what I mean?
Right. Now here's a little mind blow for you. Okay, I actually talked to Snow about this, and then we talked about it again yesterday. But the hit song "In Too Deep" by Sum 41 was going to be a reggae song with Snow.
Oh, nice. That would have been amazing.
Yeah, and I need to find out. There's a guy named Frank. Shout out to Frank. I hope Frank shows up tomorrow. I don't know, but he's kind of like Snow's right-hand man when it comes to the music. I got to find out if he has any demos or something. I need to get my mitts on In Too Deep with Snow. I got to find this Sum 41 Snow collaboration. I'm going to see what I can do.
Oh, yeah. If you can find that, please flip it my way. I would love to hear that. Maybe this is my gateway into Sum 41,
Well, they're done, right? They did that final concert at the Junos and called it. We'll see if they have a comeback.
I can still listen to their old records.
I guess you can do that. Sure, we'll let you do that. Have you ever crossed paths with Ashley McIsaac?
No, I haven't, but I know Basil Donovan has, and I think there's a Bobby connection. I might be wrong. I'm not sure about that one. But
all great artists have a Bobby connection.
Yeah, he's a pretty influential guy.
You said the word Basil, and I realized, okay, name check. Basil's a missing link for me. I'm going to have to pick this up. But name check the current lineup of Blue Rodeo.
Okay, so we'll start with the original
Go
members.
Slowly.
That's Jim Cuddy.
Okay, Jim Cuddy's an FOTM.
Greg Keeler.
Greg Keeler's an FOTM.
Basil Donovan.
Haven't had Basil over yet. Okay.
Oh, you'd have a great interview.
You know
Basil would probably be the guy who you wouldn't even have to do any kind of backstory research. You just put a mic on. He'll talk to you about old Toronto. I mean, Basil saw the Beatles at Maple Leaf Gardens. He can start from there. He goes deep.
He was there.
He's deep into the Toronto music history. So I highly recommend you get Basil Donovan on this show.
Totally going to do it. Keep going there.
Okay, so the originals we've already done, right? Jim, Greg, and Baz.
Yeah.
Then we have Glenn Milcham,
who has visited. He's an FOTM.
After Glenn Milcham, the next longest serving member of the band would be moi, Mike Boguski.
And you're a multi-time visitor, and love having you as an FOTM.
I love being here. Thanks, Mike. And then after myself, the next member to have joined was Colin Cripps,
who will be here July 16. You know what it's like, though, when you're prepped for somebody? I think I told you this off recording, but you got the songs loaded up. You've been diving in and do the research. You start to get excited about it, right? I have so many questions for Colin Cripps. I have a question from Tom Wilson. I have some Junk House questions. I have all these questions. I get all excited. To have that feeling, okay, it's 11 o'clock, and you're kind of around 10:50, you're prepped, the live stream has started, you got all your files set up and everything. You're you just need your guest now. And you kind of, you're getting closer to 11, you're like, rock stars, he's not going to be early. And then it hits 11, and you look outside, and it's you're looking for, you're like a dog waiting for its owner to come home. And then it's 11:02, 11:03, and you're like, I think I'm being stood up. Like you have this feeling like you're stood up by Colin Cripps. And then you get, and that's when I went hunting for that phone number and you came in.
That's improvisation of life right there. But I just want to go to the final member to have joined our group, which is the great Jimmy Bosko.
Of course.
And he is, he's been a star since he was 13 years old. I mean, he's a blues phenom. He's Colin Linden toured with him. I think he did a tour with B.B. King, if I'm not mistaken. He went on to the Sheepdogs. He has a great group called Brooks and Bosko with his wife Brittany. So you want to get Jimmy Bosko.
No, you know what? This is my pledge for the summer of 2025. I'm going to complete the Blue Rodeo collection.
Right on.
Thank you so much. And when, I know we're not here to talk a lot of Blue Rodeo, but when can we see Blue Rodeo next?
In Toronto, it's the third weekend in August. What is that, the 24th?
Okay. August, though. Okay. Well,
I'm not sure. I don't have my calendar in front of me.
And that's a Budweiser Stage.
That's our annual summer show at Budweiser Stage. Then we're beginning our 40th anniversary tour, which takes us across Canada. Wow. That goes through October, November, a bit of December, and then January we end in Massey Hall here in Toronto. So that's a big one. You don't want to miss that one.
Well, I said this to you last time you visited, which, by the way, last time you visited, you brought with you Cleve Anderson.
Yeah, we had that group, West of James. Fantastic. Nickel Robertson on guitar, too.
And he's a Mimico guy,
he's
right?
He's a Mimico guy, yeah.
Is he going to be in Bob's backyard tomorrow?
Cleve will, yeah, for sure. It'll be Derek Brady on bass. Cleve Anderson on, Derek Brady plays with the Skydiggers and plays with Hawksley Workman. Jeez. And then Cleve Anderson on the drums, myself on accordion and piano, and the great Johnny Bora on vocals and doing his wonderful songs.
What a small musical world we live in, I find. All these names, you mentioned Hawk there, and it's like how it all connects and everything. And
small little village that we live in, the Canadian music scene.
Well, okay, so I'm going to drop a couple of names on you. Well, you mentioned Cleve. So Cleve was in the Battered Wives. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Cleve would have something to say about the passing of Stephen Leckie from the Vile Tones.
When did that happen?
I'm going to say maybe 1 to 2 weeks ago.
Really? Toronto Mike, you're laying this on me for the first time.
Yeah.
I had no idea. That's super sad.
Well, Liz Worth, who wrote the book on that scene, which is like that Toronto punk scene from the late 70s, early 80s, I had her on Toronto Mike to talk about the passing of Stephen Leckie. You should check that out. And she's actually married to a guy named Kiri Papoots. And Kiri's dad was a founding member of the Vile Tones, and he went by the name Chris Haight. Do you know what name? I almost don't like saying it, but the name that Stephen Leckie chose as his like stage name persona in the Vile Tones.
What would it be? What?
Nazi Dog.
Yeah, that wouldn't age well. I always thought that if I were a member of that any band in that scene, that my name would be Michael Boguski.
Oh, you know what? Much better than Nazi Dog. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like I always think, Kiri's dad, Chris, went by Chris Haight. I'm like, there's a name, as an old man, you can be proud and say, yeah, I was Chris Haight. Okay.
But the thing is about those punks in that time, like I think about who were the guys from California, Black Flag, right?
Right.
And then there was another one. Oh gosh.
Oh, this is the American hardcore scene.
Yeah, in the American hardcore scene, like who was the one that had that song California Uberales? Oh gosh, they're American punk band, but sort of they would make Nazi references, but not as to extol those hateful values, but as a resistance to fascism. But in today's day and age, that doesn't, you just can't do that anymore.
Okay, so you and I,
I just want to finish this point because it was interesting. I was actually playing a Bob Wiseman CD. Which one was it? In the car. And he has a song called My Cousin Dave. It's a very comical tune where he talks about David Geffen being a distant related cousin. And then he uses the tune to call out David Geffen for signing Guns N' Roses. And he mentions that the Guns N' Roses uses the N-word, and they call...
Yeah, there is one song.
They call LGBTQ people the F word.
The Dead Kennedys, by the way.
Dead Kennedys, there we go, yeah. But anyway, so my son was listening to it, and all he could hear was that line. And he was like, oh, you can't use that word. And I'm trying to explain to my 16-year-old, I'm saying, no, he's calling it out. This is like social justice. He's written a song saying, you shouldn't have bands like Guns N' Roses on your label because they use these abhorrent, hateful words. But it just didn't, my son couldn't get it because his generation has been raised to just, you don't use that word ever. Not
I'm
in
so
any
glad you're
kind
raising
of.
this point, because I used to believe strongly that context was king, right? It's all in context. But at some point that completely changed.
That completely changed. And you know what? I think I'm okay with it. Like, I think it's safer.
But are we talking about the N-word?
N-word, F-word.
Like, is there other? So I won't say the N-word, even if I'm quoting somebody.
I
or
won't
whatever.
say it at all. Like, I'm doctrinaire. And I won't say the F-word also.
Oh, so the homophobic slur.
Yes.
F-word,
Yeah, it's Pride Month. So I
Lots
won't
of
use
F-words.
I won't use the F-word. I won't use the N-word. And I'm sort of down with my son's generational approach to it, whereas I do recognize something's lost, but maybe that's just the evolution of things, that we're at a state now where it's doctrinaire. You just don't use it, and that's cool, you know.
So Scott Thompson from Kids in the Hall was here a couple of months ago, and in fact his agent will be at TMLX. So it's not Scott, but his agent Arlene will be at TMLX 19. Can't wait to see her, and Larry. That'll be a good time. But I wouldn't say the name, and I'm gonna say it actually, because so to me there is a difference. Like, I won't say the N-word even in a context. Like, I won't quote like an NWA song or something and use the N-word or whatever.
I think Chris Rock says we're supposed to just like enjoy it, but then pause when that line comes up. You know, that's
right. Well,
the
yeah,
thing, you know?
right. I'm thinking now of Office Space, right? When the guy was rapping
right.
along to Ghetto Boys. Okay, so where am I going with this? Except I didn't want to say the F slur. And
Yeah, don't
Scott
say it.
Thompson, I won't say it, but Scott kind of got on me like, just say it, and he said it, but he, of course, he has license to say it, but he's like, just say it or whatever. Like, he was basically just saying like, just,
But when
just
we
say
were
it.
in
He
high-
says we've all gone too far. Like, just say it.
But when we
He's
were in
okay
high
with it.
school, we did say, we didn't even know it was bad. It was used every second sentence.
Yeah.
And then, you know, there were still
We said that a
there were
lot.
still people in high school that were hip enough to know, you know what, don't use that word. And we laughed at them. And, you know, back in the 60s and 70s, there was people that were hip enough to know, don't use the N-word at all. Like, they had a 2025 view of that word. So, like, I'm not trying to, like, I don't think historical shaming is cool. I love Patti Smith, and I love all of the artists that used the N-word as part of a
John Lennon
resistance.
put
John
it,
Lennon.
in
But
a song.
you know what? There were still people at that time, a very small group of people that were like, nah, I'm not even going to go there. And you know what? Maybe they made the right call.
So back to the other N-word, Nazi. Okay, so and again, you and I can't really speak to this because we weren't there in the late 70s, early 80s. But you know, we're not. We were
Well, we were
alive.
there. We just weren't.
We were on Queen Street.
We were just a little too young.
We were on Queen Street. But I keep hearing people bend over backwards to try to justify like why some punks were against it, obviously, but why some punks were using like the swastika and Nazi dog and stuff like this.
Right,
And
yeah.
it still doesn't pass my sniff test because you're only 30 to 40 years removed from World War II.
Well, exactly.
Where
Exactly.
millions and millions of Jewish people were killed because of their religion and under the guise of this swastika and this Nazi regime. And I'm sorry, I don't get it. Like, I don't get it when I watch old docs about like that Nathan Phillips Square in 1980, or was it 81? I don't know. They had like this I think Teenage Head. I have Gene Champagne's drumsticks right here. But I think the Vile Tones played this, and this whole event was happening. And I can see footage of guys wearing jackets with swastikas in the back. I don't fucking get it.
I think it was shock value, and I think to some extent, like, it's like Kanye today. I think it's just, let's go for the most extreme shock value you possibly can. But, you know, you have to, at a certain point, reconcile your ignorance, right? Like, you know, I think if you're ignorant, you're just going to grab whatever is shock value, and you may not be hateful. You may not have hate in your heart, but I don't know if ignorance is like, I think if you're ignorant and you're not hateful, you'll eventually become hateful. Like, ignorance is the first part of it, and I think education, you know, is so important. And I think when people are, yeah, I'm going to get a swastika and be hardcore, it's like, okay, you're ignorant because you don't know what that represents. You don't know how many people died. Like, my great grandfather died in Auschwitz. You know, I'm Polish, right? Like, the history is brutal. And so I just think if everybody had a little bit more historical understanding of what that symbol truly represented, then they wouldn't want to grab it as a shock value piece. But because there's such a lack of funding for education, especially in the States, there's a lot of disproportionate levels of education that people just don't get it. So
it's next
very
level ignorance as far as, and maybe it is miseducation, but it would only take, you know, one quick conversation
Sure.
with somebody who knows to kind of tell you, hey, you know, Chris Haight is a better handle than Nazi dog.
I agree.
All right, context is king. But now I drop this quick reference every time somebody points out the fact that they're using the N-word in context, which is that Wendy Mesley was quoting the name of a book, I think, and it has the N-word in it, written by a black woman, I believe, if I got the story right. And Wendy Mesley, it wasn't on CBC, an internal conversation where she used the N-word in that context, and that pretty much led to her being walked out of the CBC.
Yeah,
so there is no context that's appropriate for some slurs.
Well, it just seems that that's where we're at, and I at the same time I do understand that there are people who are like, no, that's extreme, but I don't know. Like I think hate is a really bad thing, and I think sometimes extreme positions are needed to keep it at bay. And I just think you look what's going on right now down south, and
right.
These are scary times, and they may not be scary for certain people, but for other communities, they're very scary right now. And so I think everybody needs to be a little bit aware of that.
The only acceptable hate is hate of Nazis. Fuck the Nazis.
I remember I worked with I had a friend who I worked at a bookstore with, and I used to say hate a lot, like, oh, I hate this, I hate the weather, I hate traffic, and he goes, what did he say? He goes, what's the line? He had a great line about just the word hate itself. He said, I can't remember right now, but the point being that even to say
it's
hate,
a strong word. You got to reserve it.
Like just try to avoid.
I don't like traffic.
I don't like traffic either. Let me tell you, I'm not a fan of it down here at Lakeshore and Mimico, Mike. I've written. Okay, I'm gonna do this right now. Amber Morley, if you're listening, I wrote you an email yesterday. I can't get to work, and neither can my wife. We need a solution. Why are you shutting down eastbound Lakeshore to one lane while eastbound Gardner is shut down? And why are you also now shutting down westbound to one lane at Park Lawn to rip up the TTC tracks? Like, do you really want all of us in Mimico to just suffer? I mean, come on. We can do better than that. A little logistics, please.
So Amber Morley visits once a year where basically we do like a recap of what's going on in that year. I could totally pull that clip. Although we'll see how it ages by the next time she visits, but she does visit regularly, and I would pull that clip and play it for her.
Please do.
Because, as much as I like her as a person, when she was on last time, I told her that there's only one bike ring left outside Mimico Arena, and my son and I would bike there. And I explained that there used to be 3. One just got run over, and then one has no ring. It's just a pole, so you can't actually use it. And then she had an assistant with her who took a note in real time, and she says, oh, we'll get that fixed, okay? This was December 2024. We're now talking, this is just fixing a fucking bike ring, and we're now talking at the end of June 2025, and I can tell you there's still only one bike ring outside Mimico Arena.
I'm happy to come on when you have Amber here, by the way.
You know what? I can make that happen. You can, and by the way, I will say it's tough work. There's a tough work to be a city councilor. There's only 25.
I would love to write an improvised song on the spot.
Would you do it?
When Amber's here. I'm happy to do it.
But I will say on a personal level, I'm a big Amber Morley fan.
Yeah, for sure. No, she's got her mind and her heart in the right direction, but the traffic logistics need to be in this particular neighborhood. It's reached the point where it could become a mental health issue for the whole community. It's really getting serious.
I agree. Now, my wife, who works like York and Queens Quay, she typically gets herself to Mimico GO station and then takes the GO. This is her move. Typically.
Well, that would make sense. But we're all the way past Park Lawn. Like we're almost.
You need something where that that tent.
What happened to the GO station that they're supposed to put at the old Christie Pets factory, the Christie cookies factory? That's been. When am I going to be like retired by the time I see that?
I'll get some answers to these questions.
Yeah, please do.
You said by accident you said Christie Pits, and I need to tell you.
Because you mentioned Christie Pits.
Well, yeah, I'm here to tell you, man.
Yeah.
You got to get your ass to Christie Pits this summer. It's the best baseball in the city outside the Dome, and it's by far the best value in the city. No ticket required. Grab a hot dog, grab a beer, enjoy some awesome baseball.
Great. That's so great. Toronto Mike is so great. CIUT and Steve Fruitman is so great, and Christie Pits baseball is so great. There's a lot of great things still in this great city of ours. So don't let the haters tell you that Toronto sucks, because Toronto's awesome.
Cleve Anderson is so great. Bobby
Yeah.
Wiseman, he's great.
They're all great.
Apparently Colin Cripps is great too.
Colin Cripps is great. He just probably had something serious going on.
Well, I'll find out.
Yeah.
That'll be my first question is what happened? And that'll be my first question here. I do have a book for you, Mike Boguski, on
Thank
the
you.
history of Toronto Maple Leafs baseball.
Oh, yeah, I'll take that.
Of course you're taking that. Also, since I'm giving you gifts, I have a measuring tape for you. This was going to be Colin's. Now it's yours. That's
Can I take Colin's lasagna?
Yeah. You know what? You know what? You can have Colin. You know what? Colin
I just want
stood me up.
just the lasagna. We'll take the lasagna. That's it.
Okay, Palma pasta lasagna. Absolutely. And then again, if you got your way to Great Lakes tomorrow, there'll be more fresh pasta waiting for you there. I have some fresh craft beer from Great Lakes Brewery. You have a measuring tape from Ridley Funeral Home. They only sell Canadian caskets at Ridley Funeral Home. They're very proud to have Northern Casket to offer to their families. And again, that's a proudly Canadian. They're proud to support Canadian companies, and you should check if the funeral that you're going to use is Canadian owned and if they are providing great Canadian products, because that's what you'll find at Ridley Funeral Home. Shout out to Brad Jones and his excellent podcast, Life's Undertaking. Speaking of excellent podcasts, this is only the second last time because this is the 3-month deal ends at the end of June. But season 8 of Yes, We Are Open has just dropped, and I got to ask you, Mike Boguski, did you ever make a trip out to, I guess, with Blue Rodeo? Do you ever play Regina, Saskatchewan?
Oh,
Sure you did.
Regina, many times.
Yeah, many times
absolutely.
with Blue Rodeo.
Yeah.
Have you ever been out there unrelated to Blue Rodeo?
No, never been to Regina unrelated to Blue Rodeo.
Okay, tough questions on this program here. Well, I'm telling you, Al Grego made his way to Regina, and he talked to some small business owners about their trials and tribulations, and these inspiring stories are in season 8 of Yes, We Are Open. Also, I was talking to Cliff Hacking. He's from EPRA. They're the good people behind recyclemyelectronics.ca, and Cliff is going to do his very best to hang with us at Great Lakes Brewery tomorrow night at TMLX 19. Of course, if you have old cables, old electronics, old devices, Mike, you don't throw it in the garbage.
No, I don't. I'm going to just stop you right there. See, I still use a flip phone from 2009, and I can't stop using it. So I have about like 30 of them that I've bought over the years, and they're slowly starting to die. And I got a message from Bell saying that I have to pay $3 a month now because they won't support 3G. So I want to get rid of my old ones. I'm going to go to recycleyourelectronics.ca.
Recyclemyelectronics.ca.
Yeah.
Put in
There
your
you go.
postal code, find out where to drop it off. I haven't seen
Keeps
one of
you
those in a long
Trump free.
time.
Trump free. You have no news feed with these.
Okay,
Stay
and there's a
happy.
beautiful woman on your screen. Who is she?
Oh, that's my beautiful wife, Eva.
And how long you been married to Eva?
Eva and I have been together for over a decade, but we are officially married 2 years.
Okay, well, that's exciting. Hopefully I get to meet. Maybe send Eva to TMLX 19 tomorrow.
I will.
All right, last but not least, I want to shout out Nick Iones and Building Toronto's Skyline. He also has Building Success Series, where you remember he coached me. That was quite the episode of Toronto Mike. Much love for your support, Nick Iones and Fusion Corp. And I look forward to recording new episodes of Building Success with Nick Iones. You should subscribe and listen. Okay, can you tell me about a recent guest to this program who I got to know? She shreds, kind of like Ashley McIsaac, but Ann Lindsay. Do you know Ann Lindsay?
I do know Ann. And Ann, just to bring it back to this improv thing I'm pushing with Bobby, is also a student of, was a student of Casey Sokol. So Casey was a guy up at York University that ran this contemporary improvisation program since like 1971. He retired about 4 years ago. But, you know, Bobby was a student, Ann Lindsay was a student, I was a student, John Wynot, Ann Bourne, 2 other people related to Blue Rodeo. So yeah, Ann is a great improviser and a great musician and just a nice person who I've spent a lot of time with.
She's with the Jim Cuddy Band.
That's correct, yeah.
But she has had periods where she played with Blue Rodeo.
Yeah, she also played with Page and Plant.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yes, yes. So hello to Ann Lindsay, who came up organically. I was in Blair Packham's backyard last weekend. Here, Blair Packham from the Jitters.
Yeah, I remember Blair. Yeah, for sure. He used to have a radio program where he would support independent songwriters. I don't know if he still does that.
No, but he did. He told me. I believe it was on 1010. Oh,
yeah.
Well, way back when, before it was like available on terrestrial radio, he was at U of T radio. But he was with Jim Reed. I think his name is Jim Reed, and they had a show on 1010 for quite a long time. But no more. But he'll also be at TMLX 19. But I was there, and organically somebody started talking about Ann Lindsay, and I was like, I know Ann Lindsay. Because my first question for Ann was, what the hell is the difference between a fiddle and a violin?
What was her answer? I would have
She
loved
says
to
there's no
hear.
difference.
Okay.
It's how you play it.
It's how you play it, yeah.
But I actually, can I tell you, I was this years old, 50 years old, when I learned that there's nothing different between the actual instrument of a violin and a fiddle. I had no idea.
Yeah, I know. It would be like a piano that you play barrel house barroom piano on, or Mozart. It's still a piano.
How was this improvised, spontaneous episode of Toronto Mike with the great Mike Boguski?
I think it's the best one we've done yet, Mike. Honestly, like really improv.
Well, you know what? You can't say that because during the pandemic, when I was starving for live music,
Yes, all right.
you set up your keyboard in the backyard and you played Diamond Mine, and I'm telling you, you can't top that.
Well, I did it in the style of Weather Report, which was a great jazz fusion group from the 70s. I split the keyboard into like a Wayne Shorter horn part and a Jaco Pastorius bass part and a Zawinul piano in the middle. So it was not just Diamond Mine. It was Diamond Mine honoring Weather Report.
So give another shout out to, you're calling it what? Two Pianos, No Rodeo?
Yeah, so it's called Bob Wiseman and Mike Boguski, Two Pianos, No Rodeo. We'll see you this summer.
And you're taking Colin Cripps' lasagna.
Lasagna.
You're going
Sorry,
to tell
buddy.
him he did that?
Yeah, I am. I'm like, Colin, I'm taking your lasagna. It's so good.
Well, it's in the freezer. Somebody should enjoy it. It's delicious. And thank you to Palma Pasta. I got to say thank you to Palma Pasta because they're feeding us all tomorrow for free. Like, there's no ticket for this event. You don't buy a ticket. I've had feedback from many people like, you should charge people for TMLX. I refuse, Boguski.
How good is that pasta that I'm actually taking Colin's? Like, I'm not just messing here. Like, it's that good, folks. Get it.
Wait till you find out you could just buy it in Mississauga.
I've driven past it. It's on Queensway there.
Yeah, there's three. I think they had four. I think it might be three right now. But absolutely, here, Ontario and Queensway, you can buy some Palma Pasta. And Palma's Kitchen is where we have an event every holiday season, like late November, early December. I got to get Boguski to one of those, and then maybe you can reunite with Andy McKenzie.
Oh, that's going so far back. I can't believe I remember.
But how do you know Andy? Let's get the Andy real talk before I play the before I say the extra.
Just high school. I think she went to ECI, and there was a group of us getting into trouble together. And
Smoking dope.
Probably.
Smoking dope and listening to New Kids on the Block.
But she had great music taste. I remember she had really good taste in music, and I remember I liked being around people that dug good music at that time. In high school, you quickly figure out like who likes good music and who doesn't. I remember Andy had
100%.
Andy had good music taste.
And now she's all about the boy bands, but not the new boy bands, like New Kids on the Block. 98 Degrees would excite Andy.
Hey,
So,
whatever you
floats
dig.
your
I'm
boat.
never gonna, whatever you dig is good for you, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
And thank you to Rob Pruce for this extra. I believe tomorrow I'll be getting a new one if he finished it on time, where he puts new Easter eggs at the end. Rob Pruce in the basement tomorrow with Bob Willett. It's an episode of Toast, and then we're literally doing like 2 hours of Toast, and then all three of us are going to make our way to Great Lakes Brewery at 30 Queen Elizabeth Boulevard for TMLX 19. Be there or be square. And that brings us to the end of our 1719th show. Go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. Much love to all who made this possible. Again, that is Great Lakes Brewery. Their podcast is called Between Two Fermenters, and it's excellent. Hosted by Troy Birch. Palma Pasta, feeding us all tomorrow. Delicious Italian food available in Mississauga, Oakville, and I think at some Longos and at palmapasta.com. Moneris, love working with Moneris. Yes, We Are Open is the podcast. Toronto Maple Leafs Baseball. Snow is the official ambassador. I'll be hanging with the snowman tomorrow. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Building Toronto Skyline, and Ridley Funeral Home. See you all tomorrow for Toast with Bob and Rob. See you then.